My name is Ralph Kaneshiro, and I'm 90 years old. I'll be 91 in August.
And you're the branch of the military you served, and how long?
The military service was called Military Intelligence Service, or MIS, and I went in May of 1945, just after the European theater of war was over, and I trained at Schofield Barracks instead of going to a special school like Fort Snelling. I did not go there. We were kind of a hurry-up group because the war in Japan was coming to an end. And after our training, our school, we were half a day basic and half a day Japanese language school. We, at the last few days, we were introduced to the naval group. And the reason for that is Japanese Americans were not recruited for the Navy. Anyhow, we were learned that we will be interrogating naval prisoners of war. These are the ones that the United States Navy had sunk, and they were survivors. Fortunate for us, the war in Japan ended, and so again we were not introduced to Japanese prisons at that time. We were headed for the Philippines. At the time, the headquarters was known as ATIS. That stands for Allied Translators and Interpreter Service, because it included other nations besides the American interpreters and interrogators. After some time at this camp, we were picked to go to the POW camp, Prisoners of War camp. At that time, we didn't know that we were going because it was still military secret wherever we were traveling, even though the war has already ended. Anyhow, we found out where we were later. We interrogated Japanese prison, not for any specific important questions, but more so for personal. And the important part of the questions were, where did you want us to send you? In other words, the prison was crowded, and we had to send some of them home, the ones that are healthy. And after we had done that, we went back to Addis, and they told us to pack up because we were going sailing again. And this time we reached Tokyo, and we were headed for the Tokyo Addis headquarters. This was the main headquarters, and we remained there for some time. We had no duties. We were just free. Eventually, we were sent to different army units, and I landed up in a place called Atsugi Air Base. Atsugi Air Base was a Japanese naval air base, and we served as interpreters between the American soldiers who could not speak Japanese or understand Japanese for anything that needed to be done. After some time, I was transferred to another air base. This one was in Hokkaido, It's called Chitose Air Base. And I did the same thing. Now, one of the important things that I did was to make communications with Japanese contractors in building residence for the families that were being sent because the officers were going to be there for some time. And after serving there, I was told to pack up, and we were headed for a place called Zama. Zama was a place where we ended up because we were going home for discharge. And here, all the guys that we were in school with got together. After we left this place, we were given our discharge papers, and that was in December 1945. And I'm sorry, that was 1946. And I became a civilian again and went home. My home was in Maui, and tried to find employment. But employment was hard for us there in Maui. So I was told that Honolulu, on the island of Oahu, where Pearl Harbor was, and Hickam Air Base was, they were recruiting veterans. And I was fortunate to work for the Naval Supply Center in Pearl Harbor for some years. And in 1950, I transferred to Japan, Tokyo Quartermaster Depot. This was during the Korean conflict. And I signed up for 2 years. I served my 2 years and decided I didn't want to continue working there. The job was easy. I was a supervisor in a data processing unit where we used IBM equipment to print out many copies of important information pertaining to the war. After I came home, I tried to work at Naval Supply Center again, but I made a mistake of getting all my annual leave pay at one lump sum. And therefore, I had to wait until that period was over. And then I started working at Pearl Harbor. After getting kind of discouraged at this station, I came to the mainland, and I found many jobs here. And again, as a supervisor in various computer outfits, after a while I decided that this was not for me. I'm going to resign. And the reason was I had a problem with my attitude, and I didn't know that until I retired. And the veterans, Army Veterans Unit called all of us who were not yet classified, and they talked to us about our life and what kind of problems we were having. And I found that I was a PTSD, post-trauma and stress disabled person. At first, they didn't feel like I was very troubled person, But after a while, and interviewed by different psychologists, they found that I was 100% post-trauma and stress disabled person. And after I resigned my work, I decided that I'd look for other jobs, but I couldn't because of my problem. And VA decided to help me. They did all kinds of things to try to help me, but I was not being able to help. And so I was classified as a PTSD person that cannot be employed again. And up to now, I have not worked in any paid job.
How did you feel about the war? Were you angry that the war was happening, or were you more angry at Japan, or were you feeling more patriotic towards America?
Actually, I was not angry at anybody. I was discouraged because Japan did what they did, bomb Pearl Harbor. So we were just floating around, you might say. In Hawaii, we were not like the mainland where they put us in internment camps. It was not necessary. There was no place to run away. So they let us do anything we want, but there was a blackout time, which means that at a certain time we were not supposed to be outside roaming around. And all the homes had to be blacked out. We didn't have to move. In Hawaii, we were more free. In fact, we were very free during the day to go wherever we want, except certain military installation. Of course, we wouldn't be there. They've got it guarded real good.
Did you face any prejudice being of Japanese descent in Hawaii?
Yes. Even in Hawaii, there are different races. About between 75 and 80% of the population in Japan at that time was Japanese or Japanese Americans. So there were other races, and of course they'd call us names and they'd give us hard time, but we were able to overcome all that.
So you also spoke about speaking to people from Japan, the POWs. Were they ever hostile towards you or angry at you for being with the American services?
No. They knew that their country was defeated, and they were pretty humble people. So we never had any problems with them or with the people in Japan.
If you hadn't been drafted, do you think you still would have enlisted into the Army voluntarily?
That's a very difficult question to answer. If the situation was the way it was, then I would be glad to be drafted into the Army. But if it is the way it is today, I would not want to be drafted.
What exactly triggered your post-traumatic stress disorder?
Usually, people who were in the combat or in combat zones have seen the destruction of the war and the death of people. In my case, I didn't see the death of people. I saw the destruction of the areas like in Manila and in Tokyo and parts of Japan. And when I was at the prisoner of war camp, I saw these prisoners. They were very thin. They hadn't had food for a long time, and there were many who died during this time, and many who lived through it were so thin and so full of different kinds of sores, just looking at them made me feel like, very sad for them. But it was not only them. See, Japan thought that they were so superior that eventually they were going to conquer the Asian nations. So they decided to send families of the soldiers to the camps. Unfortunately, they did not survive. That is, most of them did not survive. And for the ones that I saw survive, I felt so sorry for them. These are some of the things that bothered me during my term as just a plain soldier. And I was in a combat zone, the Philippines. And when I came home, there are times when I felt so slighted for a few things that, well, these are abnormal things. And I would have arguments with people that work with me. I was a supervisor. I would even argue with the guys that are under me. They only said, you're about 30% sick. And I said, what? Anyhow, after some arguments with psychiatrists, and this is PTSD, the Veterans Administration sent me to the headquarters in West LA, and I talked to a more able psychiatrist several times, and he decided I was very, very badly sick. So I was surprised. I thought it might be 70% or 80%, but you are 100% PTSD.
Earlier, your daughter spoke about you seeing a lot of destruction in Japan and how you saw a lot of orphans.
Well, the destruction is another reason that caused my attitude to go bad. Well, not only the destruction, but the people that survived were in a very bad state. And many of them were children. I come out of my building that we were stationed in. Every day we see these children asking for chocolatito. To them, that's food, any kind of food. And of course, we give them whatever we can find, whatever we can buy. It can be very expensive, so we have to be careful. Even though we saw so many children that were starving, the other thing was I heard people homeless, and they were living in subways. But they told me that every day they had stretchers and they had to carry them out. In other words, they starved to death. These are some of the things that remain in my mind.
How do you feel about situations today with us sending young men out to Afghanistan and then coming back with PTSD?
Yes, I feel very, very sorry for these people. And that's the reason I say I would not want to be inducted in the Army. I would not. And certainly I would not volunteer for it.
How long was that training then?
Our basic training was only, I think it was 13 weeks. We didn't do much during the marching areas. We also, according to the basic training, I'm not sure what you'd call it, but part of it was learning how to defend ourselves if we were in a jungle. So we had jungle training. We also had various jungle training, including holding a 30 caliber machine gun with the strap around the neck and shooting at make-believe targets that come up. They were all blanks, no bullets, and shoot at targets that pop up, those kind of things. One of the funniest things about that exercise was during a very dark day. There was no moon, no stars. We were supposed to this is jungle training, and each squad had a leader, and they assigned us a place to go down into the ravine. What was so funny was, in Hawaii, there's a plant or tree that's called a how tree. The branches are like vines, and they're thick. You can walk on those things, except the fact that you fall through the hole. So anyhow, we were supposed to be under this, walking under this, but our leader led us on top of the thing, and we keep falling through the holes. Eventually, we realized that we're supposed to be down below, so we got ourselves down. Then we were supposed to come out, and our leader had a compass, and we were going the right direction. So just about the time we were out, we saw the lights, and that's where we were supposed to be. But there was a sniper, and he'd come out to the sniper and say, "Is this the way out?" Sniper says, "You're all dead."
So you really enjoyed training then, right?
Oh yeah.
It wasn't training to you. It was like
it's not a regular, you know.
But you never saw combat though, correct? Like you never actually shot a gun at someone though.
We don't shoot at anybody except at a target with the guy by the waving the flag, and every time we missed it, mag is drawer.
Recently, in 2011, you received an award in Washington, D.C. What was that experience like for you?
The award was a gold medal for all the veterans that served in during the during and after the war up to 1946, December 1946. It was a Congressional Gold Medal given to all veterans who are still living. And if if they were deceased, their wives or the family was able to receive one of those medals.
The design on the medal?
Yes.
Do you know why it was designed the way it is?
We had a choice to design, to choose from. I'm sure there were about 5 different designs, and most of all wanted this because it represented all the units of the Japanese American soldiers, not just the 442 or the 100, but the MS as well as others.
So you got this medal in 2011, correct?
Yes.
But you served the U.S. military in the late 40s, right?
Yes, 45, 46.
Why do you think it took so long for them to give you a medal?
I have no idea. Everything that has happened to us was like 30 years later. It seems to me like there's some, maybe some prejudice. I'm not sure. Why would it be so late?
A lot of our generation is taking interest in the lives of Japanese World War II veterans. Do you have any messages for our generation about war or about what happened?
What can I say?
Any lessons or things that you think we should take with us?
It was a very difficult time, and in Hawaii, the people are very, very patriotic. There were more guys volunteering than was required, because a certain percent of the people were from Hawaii, and the other was from those in the internment camp. And there are many who volunteered, but I understand that in many cases the parents disapproved for the sons to go to war because they were interned. Why would we send our son to fight for the country that put us in internment camp? That was one of the disapproved questions.
Well, I think we're done with the interview. Thank you so much for your time and
your stories. That's okay, Sam. Anytime.